Have you ever noticed how often we carry burdens we were never meant to bear alone? We try to handle everything on our own, fight through difficulties, and end up feeling exhausted. But why do we do this when we have a God who invites us to cast all our worries on Him? In the toughest moments of life, instead of running to God's arms, we try to solve everything our own way. And that's when frustration sets in, because we forget that we were never meant to walk alone. The interesting thing is that the more we trust God with our struggles, the sooner we see Him at work. It sounds contradictory, doesn't it? But that's the essence of faith. It's not about seeing, it's about trusting. God never promised a life without hardships, but He did promise His constant presence in the midst of them. And when we understand that, we realize that challenges don't come to destroy us. They come to strengthen us, transform us, and draw us closer to Him. Now, if you want to know how to put this into practice, stay with me, because what I'm about to share could change the way you face adversity. So go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to keep receiving content that strengthens your faith. And let me know in the comments, my trust is in God's hands. Leave this declaration to reaffirm your faith and start this journey with an open heart for what God is about to reveal. Sometimes life presses in so hard that it feels like we're carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders. Our first instinct? Try to fix everything ourselves, as if we have complete control over every detail. But what if, instead of drowning in worry, we simply handed those burdens over to God? Faith isn't a backup plan. It's the only plan that truly works. When we trust in God, we find a spiritual refuge that brings peace in the middle of the storm. After all, what's the point of losing sleep over something only He has the power to change? Giving our struggles to God doesn't mean sitting back and waiting for a miracle to drop from the sky. It means moving forward with confidence, knowing that He is in control, even when the solution seems far away. Think of someone driving through a foggy road. The path ahead may not be clear, but the road is still there. In the same way, God has already mapped out the way, even if things feel confusing right now. Those who learn to trust Him experience daily miracles because they see beyond their circumstances and rest in the certainty that there is a greater purpose behind every challenge. The real question isn't whether God is present, it's whether we're allowing Him to guide our steps. The Bible is full of stories of people who faced enormous hardships but found the strength to keep going through God. Joseph was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and wrongly imprisoned, yet he held on to his faith and saw his life completely transformed at the right time. The key isn't to run from adversity, but to face it with confidence in God. And speaking of facing trials, there's a story in the Bible that perfectly illustrates how God moves in those moments. It's easy to trust God when everything is going well, but true faith is tested in the fire, literally. The story of the 3 young men thrown into the fiery furnace teaches us something powerful. God doesn't always take us out of the trial, but He walks with us through it. When King Nebuchadnezzar ordered Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to be thrown into the fire for refusing to worship the statue, they didn't back down. They stood firm in their faith, and the king saw something incredible. Not 3, but 4 men inside the fire, and the 4th looked like a divine being. This isn't just an old story. It's a living example of what we face today. How many times do we feel surrounded by the flames of hardship, thinking we're going to be consumed? Financial struggles, illness, betrayal, uncertainty. These can all feel like raging fires against us. But faith reminds us that we are never alone. God never promised a life without trials, but He did promise His presence in them. Sometimes He doesn't put out the fire right away because He knows that by walking through it, we will come out stronger, unshaken, and without even the smell of smoke from the past. The big question is, how do we respond to adversity? Do we panic, or do we trust that God is shaping us through it? The fire may be a divine test to elevate us to a new level of spiritual growth. Just as the 3 young men were promoted after their trial, our struggles can become the stepping stones to something greater. But for that to happen, we must learn where to find our refuge when challenges arise. After all, where do we turn when everything around us seems to be falling apart? When everything around us feels uncertain, when challenges surround us and fear tries to take over, there is one place where we can always find rest: the presence of God. Psalm 91 beautifully describes this truth. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. But notice, it's not about visiting this refuge from time to time, it's about living in it. Many people seek God only in times of crisis, like someone running for shelter in a storm. But true peace comes to those who learn to trust Him daily. Spiritual refuge doesn't mean the absence of challenges, it means security in the midst of them. Imagine a raging storm outside, winds howling, thunder roaring, but you're inside a solid house, warm and safe. That's what God's presence is like. The storm may keep raging, but it cannot harm you. Trusting in Him doesn't mean we won't face problems, but it does mean they won't have the power to destroy us. When fear knocks at the door, faith must be our answer. And this trust is built daily, through prayer, reading God's Word, and truly surrendering to Him. Many people seek refuge in temporary things, money, relationships, status, but none of these provide real security. Only God can be a true safe haven, an unshakable fortress. And the best part, this refuge isn't reserved for a select few, it's available to anyone who chooses to trust Him. The key is surrender. The more we lean on Him, the more we see His protection at work. But there's something even deeper in this journey. Relief doesn't always come instantly, because God also uses difficulties to help us grow. Pain has a purpose, even when we can't see it at the moment. Think of a strong tree. Its roots grow deep because it has faced strong winds, storms, and droughts. In the same way, our faith doesn't grow in times of comfort, but in times of adversity. Every challenge is an opportunity to grow, mature, and trust God more. When everything feels easy, we tend to settle in, but it's in discomfort that we are shaped. As painful as suffering can be, in God's hands, it is never wasted. Think of an athlete training for a competition. The workouts are exhausting, the muscles ache, and there are moments of extreme fatigue. But without that process, victory would be impossible. The same is true in our spiritual journey. God uses trials to refine us, to remove what is holding us back from growing. Sometimes a difficult moment teaches us more than years of comfort ever could. Those who learn to see challenges as part of God's training come out stronger, wiser, and more prepared to face anything. Of course, no one enjoys suffering, and we often want God to take the pain away as quickly as possible. But He sees beyond the present moment. God's timing is not our timing, and He knows exactly when to act. While we wait, He is shaping us, preparing us for something greater. The pain may feel endless, but there is a purpose in every detail. And when the right moment finally comes, we realize that God was in control all along. Impatience is one of the biggest challenges of faith. We want immediate answers, quick solutions, and doors to open at just the right time, or rather at our time. But God doesn't operate on human anxiety. He has a perfect timing for everything, and when we learn to trust that, peace replaces our restlessness. Take Joseph, for example. He had a great dream from God, but before he saw it come true, he spent years as a slave and a prisoner. If we only looked at his struggles, it might seem like God had forgotten him. But every step, no matter how painful, was part of the plan. Sometimes God makes us wait because He is preparing us for what's ahead. Imagine a young person eager to drive, but they've never learned how to control a car. If they take the wheel unprepared, disaster is inevitable. In the same way, God doesn't give us blessings before we're ready to handle them. If something hasn't happened yet, it could be that He's strengthening us, teaching us, or even protecting us. The problem is that many people lose faith in the waiting and try to take matters into their own hands, but those who learn to trust will see miracles happen in unexpected ways. The key isn't just to wait, it's to wait with faith. When we understand that God's timing is never late, we can rest, even when we don't see the solution yet. What seems like a delay today will make sense tomorrow. What feels like a no today may turn into a much greater yes than we ever imagined. God is always working behind the scenes, and at the exact right moment He moves. And the most amazing part? Many times He transforms our pain and waiting into a purpose greater than we could have ever dreamed. Pain, when placed in God's hands, is never wasted. He has the power to turn tears into miracles, wounds into testimonies, and hardships into spiritual growth. Look at the life of Job, a righteous man who lost everything, yet in the midst of his suffering, he held on to his faith. In the end, God restored his life in an extraordinary way, doubling his blessings. The loss wasn't erased, but it was given new meaning. Often, our deepest scars become the most powerful stories of hope for those who need it most. The truth is, everyone faces trials, but the difference lies in how we respond to them. Those who choose to trust God, even in their pain, find a purpose beyond human understanding. This doesn't mean ignoring suffering. It means allowing it to become a tool in the hands of the Creator. If you've experienced loss, disappointment, or a difficult season, ask yourself, how can I use this experience to help someone else? Many times, our pain connects us to others who are struggling, and our testimony can be the encouragement they desperately need. Turning pain into purpose is also an intentional choice. It requires seeking God's presence, asking for His guidance, and being open to what He wants to do through us. It could mean serving in a ministry, sharing your story, helping someone in need, or simply being a voice of comfort and faith. When we allow God to use our scars, we don't just find healing, we become instruments of transformation in the lives of others. And the most beautiful part, through it all, we come to realize that even in our hardest moments, God was always writing a story of redemption. So let me ask you, do you still plan to carry burdens that God has already asked you to surrender to Him? Life will always have challenges, but the difference is in how you choose to face them. You can keep trying to handle everything on your own, or you can choose to trust God, knowing that He already has everything under control. The question is, are you truly willing to surrender your struggles and wait for His perfect timing? If this message spoke to your heart, I challenge you to take a step of faith. Start practicing surrender today. Take a moment to pray, write down your worries on a piece of paper, and symbolically give them to God. And if you want to make a commitment, comment below, I surrender everything into God's hands. This simple act could be the beginning of a powerful spiritual transformation in your life. And of course, don't stop here. If this video helped you, there's so much more waiting for you. Watch the other content on the channel and deepen your understanding of faith, trust in God, and spiritual growth. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so we can continue this journey together. Because when we learn to truly depend on God, we discover that every challenge carries a divine opportunity.